I never thought browsing an art gallery would lead to the most humiliating moment of my life. But when that pretentious gallery owner threw me out like I was some street wanderer, she had no idea my husband was the anonymous collector who had been keeping her business alive for years. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. There are moments in life when everything changes in an instant. When the world as you know it gets flipped upside down and you realize that people's true colors shine brightest when they think nobody important is watching. This is the story of one of those moments. And I'm Elena, the woman who lived through it. It was a Thursday afternoon in October, one of those perfect autumn days when the golden light streaming through windows makes everything look like a painting. I had been married to David for 3 years now, and life had settled into a beautiful rhythm that I cherished deeply. Most people didn't know much about my husband's passion for collecting art, and honestly, I preferred it that way. David was intensely private about his acquisitions, often purchasing pieces through intermediaries and anonymous bidding to avoid the circus that comes with being known as a serious collector. I was just a regular woman who found joy in simple pleasures like reading poetry, tending to our small herb garden, and discovering new artists whose work spoke to my soul. That afternoon, I had decided to visit the prestigious Meridian Gallery downtown. I'd heard they were featuring an exhibition of contemporary sculptures by emerging artists, and something about the description in the art section of the newspaper had captured my imagination. The way they described one particular piece about resilience and hope resonated with me, and I felt drawn to see it in person. I had no grand plans, no intention of making any purchases. I simply wanted to experience art in its purest form, to let it wash over me and perhaps discover something that would inspire my own creative writing. I dressed comfortably that day, wearing my favorite pair of dark jeans and a soft burgundy cardigan that my grandmother had knitted for me years ago. My long brown hair was braided loosely over one shoulder, and I carried a simple canvas tote bag that contained my notebook, a worn copy of Maya Angelou's poetry, and my wallet. Looking back, I realized that this casual, understated appearance would become the catalyst for everything that followed. In the art world, appearances often speak louder than genuine appreciation, and my simple attire would soon become a liability I never anticipated. The Meridian Gallery occupied a stunning converted warehouse in the heart of the city's cultural district. The building itself was a work of art, with its exposed brick walls, soaring ceilings, and industrial steel beams that had been transformed into something elegant and sophisticated. Floor-to-ceiling windows flooded the space with natural light, creating the perfect atmosphere for viewing contemporary works. The gallery had a reputation for discovering and promoting cutting-edge artists, and its exhibitions were often featured in national art magazines. Walking through the heavy glass doors, I was immediately struck by the serene atmosphere. The gallery hummed with the quiet conversations of art enthusiasts, the soft clicking of heels on polished concrete floors, and the occasional whispered commentary between couples as they moved from piece to piece. The space was divided into several sections, each dedicated to different artists, with carefully planned lighting that made every sculpture seem to glow with inner life. I approached the first sculpture with genuine excitement, reading the small placard that described the artist's vision and technique. The piece was called Rising Phoenix, a magnificent bronze work that seemed to capture the exact moment of transformation from destruction to rebirth. The artist had managed to convey both fragility and strength in the flowing lines of the metal, and I found myself completely absorbed in studying the intricate details. I pulled out my notebook and began jotting down my thoughts, the way the sculpture made me feel, and some phrases that came to mind as I observed it. This was my ritual whenever I encountered art that moved me. I believed that art should inspire not just visual appreciation, but emotional and intellectual response, and writing helped me process those deeper connections. As I moved through the gallery, I became increasingly impressed with the quality and diversity of the work on display. Each piece told a story, conveyed an emotion, or challenged a perspective in ways that made me think differently about the world around me. I spent nearly an hour examining a series of abstract pieces that explored themes of identity and belonging, completely lost in the artist's journey of self-discovery. That's when I noticed her watching me. Victoria Ashworth stood near the gallery's reception desk like a sentinel guarding precious treasures. She was the kind of woman who commanded attention without effort, tall and statuesque with platinum blonde hair styled in a perfect chignon that probably cost more than most people's monthly rent. Her black designer dress was clearly haute couture, fitted to perfection and accessorized with jewelry that caught the gallery's strategic lighting like captured starlight. Victoria had built a reputation as one of the city's most influential gallery owners, known for her discerning eye and her ability to launch unknown artists into international recognition. But she was also known for something else: her belief that art appreciation was a privilege reserved for those who could afford to participate at the highest levels. In her world, serious collectors wore designer suits and arrived in luxury vehicles, not canvas tote bags and comfortable cardigans. I could feel her evaluating me from across the room, her sharp blue eyes taking in every detail of my appearance with the precision of an appraiser examining a questionable piece. When she began walking in my direction, her heels clicking with purpose against the concrete floor, I sensed that my peaceful afternoon was about to take an unpleasant turn. "Excuse me," Victoria said, her voice carrying the crisp authority of someone accustomed to immediate compliance. Her tone was polite on the surface, but underneath lay something much less welcoming. "I couldn't help but notice you've been spending quite a bit of time with our pieces today. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us." Now back to the story. I looked up from my notebook, surprised by the interruption but trying to maintain a friendly demeanor. "Yes, it's a beautiful exhibition. The artists you featured have such powerful voices, and the themes they're exploring really resonate with me." Victoria's perfectly sculpted eyebrows rose slightly, as if my appreciation for the art was somehow suspicious. "I see. And are you perhaps interested in making a purchase today? These are significant investments, and we do have other clients who are seriously considering several pieces." The implication was clear, though she hadn't stated it directly. She was questioning whether I belonged in her gallery, whether I was a serious potential buyer or simply someone wasting her time and taking up space that could be occupied by more profitable visitors. "I'm just enjoying the exhibition," I replied, trying to keep my voice steady despite the growing discomfort I felt. "Art doesn't always have to be about purchasing, does it? Sometimes it's about experiencing something beautiful and meaningful." Victoria's smile was as cold as winter frost. "Of course, we appreciate all forms of art appreciation. However, the Meridian Gallery is a commercial establishment, not a museum. Our artists depend on sales to continue their work, and we have a responsibility to ensure that our exhibition space is being used effectively." The words stung more than I expected. I had been nothing but respectful, nothing but genuinely interested in the work on display. Yet somehow, my presence had become a problem that needed to be managed. I could feel other gallery visitors beginning to take notice of our conversation, their own discussions growing quieter as they sensed tension in the air. "I understand that you're running a business," I said, my voice growing smaller despite my efforts to remain confident. "I'm not causing any disruption. I'm simply appreciating the art, taking some notes, and enjoying the exhibition." But Victoria was just getting started, and I could see that she had already made up her mind about me and my place in her carefully curated world. She glanced at my notebook with obvious disdain, as if my written reflections on the artwork were somehow inappropriate or unwelcome. "Ma'am, I'm going to need to ask you to limit your time with each piece," she announced, her voice loud enough to carry across the nearby sections of the gallery. Elegance and their father's business acumen. "Elena," Michael said, stepping forward, "I'm so sorry for your loss. For our loss." The words hung in the air, weighted with years of unspoken regret. Catherine moved to my side, and for the first time in years she embraced me. "We should have been here sooner," she whispered. "We should have never let pride keep us apart." Mr. Henderson finally found his voice, though it came out as barely more than a croak. "Mr. Sterling? Mrs. Sterling? I had no idea. That is, I wasn't aware." Jonathan turned his attention to the funeral director, and I watched as Mr. Henderson visibly shrank under that gaze. "Mr. Henderson, I presume?" "I'm Jonathan Sterling. This is my wife Victoria, and our children Michael and Catherine. We're here to arrange services for our son David." "Your son?" Mr. Henderson repeated weakly, his eyes darting between the Sterling family and me. "But I thought," she said. "I mean, Mrs. Sterling here was just—" "Just what?" Victoria's voice cut through the air like a blade. She may have been grieving, but she was still every inch the formidable woman who'd helped build a business empire. What exactly did you think about my daughter-in-law? The word daughter-in-law seemed to hit Mr. Henderson like a physical blow. I watched as the full weight of his mistake began to dawn on him. His face cycled through various shades of pale as he realized he'd been dismissing and insulting a member of one of the most powerful families in the country. I was simply trying to help her find arrangements within her budget, he stammered. I mean, I was being practical about the financial considerations. Financial considerations? Michael's voice was dangerously quiet. For a sterling family funeral? Catherine stepped forward, her lawyer instincts kicking in. Mr. Henderson, are you suggesting that a member of our family doesn't deserve your best services? No, of course not. Mr. Henderson was practically hyperventilating now. There's been a misunderstanding. If I had known who she was, I would never have. I mean, the Sterling family has been valued clients for decades. If you had known who she was? Jonathan's voice dropped to a temperature that could freeze water. Mr. Henderson, let me be very clear about something. Elena has been a Sterling for 8 years. She became part of this family the moment she married our son. The fact that you didn't recognize her name or treat her with appropriate respect speaks volumes about both your professionalism and your character. I had never heard Jonathan defend me before. During all the years of family tension, he'd remained diplomatically neutral at best. But now, in this moment of shared grief, something had shifted. We were united in our loss, and apparently that changed everything. Victoria moved to stand beside me, placing a gentle hand on my arm. Elena, dear, please tell me this man didn't actually refuse to provide proper services for David. The endearment caught me off guard. Victoria had never called me dear before. She'd barely called me by name during most family gatherings, but grief had a way of putting things in perspective. And apparently, our long-standing tensions seemed trivial compared to the loss we all shared. He didn't exactly refuse, I said carefully. He just made it very clear that someone like me could only afford the basic package. He assumed I was financially incapable of giving David a proper farewell. The temperature in the room seemed to drop another 10 degrees. Michael pulled out his phone, and I could see him rapidly typing what looked like a very terse message. Catherine's expression had shifted into what David used to jokingly call her corporate assassin mode. Someone like you? Victoria repeated, her voice silky with barely contained fury. And what exactly did he mean by that? Mr. Henderson was now sweating visibly, loosening his tie as if it were strangling him. Mrs. Sterling, please understand, I had no way of knowing. She wasn't wearing any obvious signs of wealth. Her clothing appeared modest, and she mentioned her husband was a freelancer. So you judged her based on her appearance, Jonathan said, his words precise and cutting. You looked at a grieving widow and decided she wasn't worthy of your attention or respect because she didn't meet your superficial standards of what wealth should look like. I was trying to be helpful. Mr. Henderson protested desperately. I've seen too many people overextend themselves financially during emotional times. I was protecting her from making decisions she couldn't afford. Catherine let out a laugh that had no humor in it whatsoever. Protecting her? By insulting her and dismissing her, we have serious collectors coming through today, and they need adequate space and time to properly evaluate potential acquisitions. The accusation hung in the air like smoke, poisoning the serene atmosphere that had drawn me to the gallery in the first place. I felt my cheeks burn with embarrassment as other visitors turned to stare, their expressions ranging from curiosity to judgment. In their eyes, I could see the same assessment that Victoria had made. I didn't belong here. There's plenty of space, I said quietly, gesturing to the expansive gallery floor around us. I'm not preventing anyone from viewing the artwork. Victoria's expression hardened, and I could see that my reasonable response had only irritated her further. She seemed to feed off confrontation, growing more confident and aggressive with each exchange. The issue isn't space, it's appropriateness. This gallery caters to a very specific clientele, and we have certain standards to maintain. The words hit me like a physical blow. Standards. What did that mean, exactly? That my clothing wasn't expensive enough? That my tote bag didn't carry the right designer label? That my genuine appreciation for art, somehow didn't count because I wasn't waving a platinum credit card? I'm a legitimate gallery visitor, I said, my voice finally finding some strength as anger began to replace embarrassment. I'm not disturbing anyone. I'm not touching the artwork. And I'm not doing anything inappropriate. I simply came here to appreciate art. But Victoria had an audience now, and she was clearly enjoying the performance. Several other visitors had stopped their own viewing to watch the drama unfold, and I could see in their faces that they had already chosen sides. In their expensive clothing and designer accessories, they saw someone who belonged, and someone who didn't. "Ma'am, I think you misunderstand the nature of our establishment," Victoria continued, her voice taking on an even more condescending tone. "The Meridian Gallery isn't a public space for casual browsing. We're a serious commercial gallery representing internationally recognized artists. Our exhibitions are curated for collectors and connoisseurs who understand the investment value of contemporary art." Each word felt like another brick in a wall being built around me, separating me from something I loved and valued. The other gallery visitors were now openly staring, some whispering to their companions while others simply watched with the detached fascination of people observing a car accident. "You're making assumptions about me," I said, though my voice sounded weak even to my own ears. "You don't know anything about my appreciation for art, or my ability to understand its value." Victoria's laugh was sharp and dismissive. "I know enough. I've been in this business for 15 years, and I can recognize a serious collector when I see one. You've been here for over an hour, taking notes like you're writing a school report, and you haven't asked a single question about pricing, availability, or provenance. That tells me everything I need to know about your intentions." The humiliation was becoming unbearable. Standing there in that beautiful gallery, surrounded by art that had moved and inspired me, I felt smaller than I had ever felt in my adult life. The woman I had married, the life I had built, the genuine love I had for artistic expression, none of it seemed to matter in the face of Victoria Ashworth's judgment. "I want to speak to someone else," I said desperately, hoping there might be another staff member who could handle this situation more reasonably. "There has to be someone here who understands that art appreciation doesn't require a minimum bank balance." Victoria's smile grew even colder. "I am the owner of this gallery, and this is my decision. If you cannot demonstrate serious intent to purchase, I'm going to have to ask you to leave so that we can serve clients who are genuinely interested in acquiring these works." The words echoed through the gallery space, and I could feel every eye in the room focused on me. The security guard near the entrance had taken notice of the situation and was slowly moving in our direction, his presence adding another layer of humiliation to an already devastating experience. "You're making a terrible mistake," I whispered, though I wasn't sure she could hear me over the sound of her own satisfaction. "Security," Victoria called out, her voice ringing through the gallery like a bell tolling the end of my dignity. "Please escort this woman from the premises. She's become disruptive to our other clients." The security guard approached with the kind of professional courtesy that suggested he had been through similar situations before. He was probably a decent man just doing his job, but in that moment, he represented everything that was wrong with this situation. Even from this distance, I could make out the familiar silhouettes of David's parents, his brother Michael, and his sister Catherine. They were accompanied by what looked like lawyers and assistants, all moving with the kind of purpose that comes with unlimited resources and absolute confidence. "Mrs. Sterling," Mr. Henderson said impatiently, "I really must ask you to leave now. I have important business to attend to." But I didn't move. Instead, I pulled out my phone and sent a quick text message. Then I looked back at Mr. Henderson, who was growing more agitated by the moment. "You know what, Mr. Henderson? I think I'll stay for a few more minutes. I have a feeling this conversation is about to become much more interesting." He frowned, clearly confused by my sudden calm confidence. "I beg your pardon. You mentioned the Sterling dynasty," I said, standing up slowly. "Tell me, what do you know about that family?" "What does that have to do with anything?" he snapped. "They're one of the most powerful families in the country. Sterling Industries is worth billions. They own half the commercial real estate in the city. They have political connections at the highest levels. And they've been clients of this establishment for 3 generations. Why?" I walked over to the window, where the group from the cars was now approaching the front entrance. "Because, Mr. Henderson, you're about to meet them. And they're here for the same reason I am. His face went pale. What are you talking about? They're here to plan a funeral, I said, turning back to face him. For David Sterling, their son. My husband. The color drained completely from his face as the implications hit him. That's impossible. You said your husband was a graphic designer. He was. He chose to work for himself rather than join the family business. But that doesn't change who he was born to be. The sound of voices in the lobby was getting closer. I could hear David's mother's distinctive tone, commanding and authoritative, as she spoke to the receptionist. Mrs. Sterling? Mr. Henderson said, his voice suddenly shaky. If this is some kind of joke. It's not a joke, I replied. David Sterling, my husband, was the youngest son of Jonathan and Victoria Sterling, the heir who walked away from billions to live a normal life with the woman he loved. The man you just dismissed is not worth your premium services. The office door opened, and the receptionist appeared, looking flustered. Mr. Henderson, the Sterling family is here. They say they have an appointment, but I don't see anything on the calendar. Behind her, I could see the imposing figures of David's family filling the lobby. Jonathan Sterling, tall and silver-haired, commanded attention even while standing still. Victoria, elegant in a way that spoke of generations of wealth and breeding, surveyed the funeral home with the critical eye of someone accustomed to the finest things in life. Send them in, I said before Mr. Henderson could respond. I believe they're here to see me. The next few moments unfolded like a scene from a movie I never thought I'd be part of. Jonathan Sterling entered the office first, his presence immediately commanding the room. At 68, he still carried himself with the bearing of a man who'd built an empire from the ground up. His steel-gray eyes swept the office, taking in every detail before landing on me. Elena, he said, his voice heavy with emotion I'd rarely heard from him before. We came as soon as we heard. Victoria Sterling followed close behind, her usual composed demeanor cracking slightly when she saw me. Despite our complicated history, I could see genuine grief in her eyes. She was impeccably dressed even in mourning, wearing a tailored black suit that probably cost more than my monthly salary, but her face showed the raw pain of a mother who'd lost her child. Mr. Henderson stood frozen behind his desk, his mouth slightly agape as he watched this reunion unfold. The business folder he'd been clutching slipped from his hands, scattering papers across the floor. Mom, Dad, I said softly, standing to face them. It had been 3 years since I'd seen them in person. 3 years since David had made his final attempt to bridge the gap between his old life and his new one. Michael Sterling, David's older brother, appeared in the doorway next. At 40, he was the spitting image of their father, with the same commanding presence and sharp intelligence. Behind him came Catherine, David's sister, who at 38 had inherited their mother's wishes for her husband's funeral. Mr. Henderson, Michael said, looking up from his phone, I've just been reviewing your business records. According to my research, Henderson & Associates has provided services for 17 Sterling Industries board members, 43 employees in senior management positions, and 6 of our major business partners over the past decade. Is that accurate? Mr. Henderson nodded frantically. Yes. We've been honored to serve the Sterling Industries family in their times of need. And those relationships have been quite profitable for your business, haven't they? Michael continued. Sterling Industries has recommended your services exclusively to our corporate family for nearly 15 years. The implications of what Michael was saying began to sink in. I could see Mr. Henderson's face growing even paler as he realized that his treatment of me could potentially cost him millions of dollars in future business. Mr. Sterling, please, let me make this right, he pleaded. I can arrange the most beautiful service for David. Our platinum package. Everything first class, no expense spared. Now you want to offer the platinum package, I interjected, finding my voice again. The same package you told me was reserved for people with real money and real status. The one you said wasn't for people like me? Victoria's eyes flashed dangerously. He said what? I took a deep breath, feeling strength I didn't know I possessed flowing through me. He told me I should go to a chain funeral home across town because this establishment caters to a certain caliber of clientele, and I wasn't it. He said he knew breeding when he saw it, and he knew when he didn't see it. The silence that followed was so complete I could hear the clock ticking on Mr. Henderson's wall. Catherine was the first to speak, her voice deadly calm. "Breeding?" she repeated. "You questioned Elena's breeding." I didn't mean." Mr. Henderson was now completely falling apart. "Elena," Jonathan said, turning to me with an expression I'd never seen before. "Would you mind sharing with Mr. Henderson what your background is? Since he seems so concerned with breeding and status." I felt a moment of old insecurity creep in. This was always the part where I felt inadequate around David's family. But as I looked at their faces, I realized something had fundamentally changed. They weren't asking me to justify myself to them. They were asking me to educate Mr. Henderson about his ignorance. "I grew up in foster care," I said, my voice growing stronger with each word. "I was shuffled between homes from the time I was 6 until I aged out at 18. I put myself through college working 3 jobs, graduated summa cum laude with a degree in elementary education, and have been teaching for 10 years. I've helped hundreds of children learn to read, many of them from backgrounds similar to mine." Mr. Henderson looked confused, as if this information didn't compute with his worldview. "And," Victoria added, her voice filled with something that sounded almost like pride, "she loved our son unconditionally. She stood by him when he chose to leave the family business. She supported his dreams, encouraged his art, and made him happier than we'd ever seen him." "David used to call home every week," Michael added, "just to tell us about Elena's latest accomplishments with her students, or how she'd helped a struggling family, or some kind gesture she'd made. He was so proud of her." Catherine nodded. "He told us she was teaching him what real success looked like. Not money or status, but making a difference in people's lives." These revelations hit me like emotional lightning bolts. David had been talking about me to his family. He'd been proud of me, bragging about me. I'd spent so many years feeling like I wasn't good enough for their world, but apparently, David had been building bridges I never knew existed. "Mr. Henderson," Jonathan said, his voice carrying the weight of decades in business, "you judged Elena based on her clothing and assumed she lacked breeding. But let me tell you what breeding actually looks like. It looks like a young woman who refuses to be bitter, despite a childhood that would have broken many people. It looks like someone who dedicates her life to educating children, many of whom society has forgotten. It looks like a wife who loved our son for who he was, not what he could inherit." Victoria stepped closer to me, and I was surprised to feel her take my hand. "Elena, I owe you an apology. We all do. We let our pride and our preconceptions keep us from seeing what David saw in you. We were wrong, and we wasted years that we can never get back." The emotion in her voice was unmistakable. This powerful woman who'd intimidated me for years was actually apologizing to me. "Mr. Henderson," she continued, turning back to the funeral director, "you made the same mistake we did. You looked at external appearances and made judgments about character and worth. The difference is, we learned from our mistake. We're here now, ready to honor our son and support our daughter-in-law. You, on the other hand, revealed something ugly about yourself." Mr. Henderson was now wringing his hands desperately. "Please, let me make this right. I can arrange the most beautiful service. Anything you want." "Anything we want?" Michael stepped forward. "What we want is for you to understand that you don't judge people based on their appearance or their background. What we want is for you to realize that respect should be given freely, not earned through displays of wealth. What we want," Catherine added, "is for you to think about how many other grieving families you've dismissed because they didn't meet your standards of what grief should look like." I thought about David, about what he would want in this moment. He'd always been about second chances, about believing people could change and grow. Even now, even after what Mr. Henderson had put me through, I could hear David's voice in my head encouraging compassion over revenge. "Mr. Henderson," I said quietly, and everyone turned to look at me. "I want you to arrange a service for my husband. Not your most expensive package, but something meaningful and dignified. I want you to treat every family that walks through your doors with the same respect, regardless of how much money you think they have." He nodded eagerly. "Yes. Yes, of course. Anything you want." "And I want you to remember this moment," I continued. "I want you to remember that the grieving widow you dismissed as unworthy was mourning a man who gave up billions to live authentically. I want you to remember that breeding isn't about bloodlines or bank accounts. It's about how we treat each other, especially when we think no one important is watching." Jonathan looked at me with what I could only describe as respect. "David chose well," he said simply. Victoria squeezed my hand. "We'd like to be involved in planning the service, if you'll have us. We want to honor David properly, and we want to do it together." For the first time since David's death, I felt like I wasn't facing this alone. The family that had once made me feel inadequate was now rallying around me, united in our grief and our love for the man we'd all lost. Mr. Henderson was frantically pulling out his premium service folders, his entire demeanor completely transformed. Of course. Let me show you our finest options. Whatever you need, whatever would honor Mr. David's memory." As he spread out elaborate funeral packages on his desk, I realized that this moment was about more than just funeral arrangements. It was about respect, dignity, and the recognition that worth comes from within, not from external appearances. David would have been proud of how this played out, not because his family's wealth had intimidated someone into submission, but because truth had ultimately prevailed over prejudice. The real victory wasn't in Mr. Henderson's desperate scrambling to make amends. It was in seeing David's family choose love over pride and in finding my own voice in the face of discrimination. This was what David had always tried to teach me, that I belonged anywhere love was present, and that no one had the right to make me feel otherwise. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us. Current exhibition. As we drove away, I caught a glimpse of the Meridian Gallery in the side mirror, growing smaller behind us. 6 months later, we received a handwritten letter from Victoria Ashworth. She had enrolled in diversity and inclusion training, had implemented new policies at her gallery to ensure all visitors were treated with equal respect, and had started a program to make art more accessible to people from all backgrounds. She thanked us for teaching her the most important lesson of her career, that art belongs to everyone who can appreciate its beauty and meaning. I never responded to the letter, but I kept it as a reminder that sometimes the most difficult experiences can lead to the most meaningful changes. And every time I visit a gallery now, I'm reminded that true art appreciation isn't about what you wear or what you drive. It's about opening your heart to beauty and allowing someone else's creativity to inspire your own soul. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.